Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be doing wildlife filmmaking at 6,000mm with the setup I've got behind me. So, how did I get to 6,000mm? First of all we need this, the OM 150-400mm lens, and that has a built-in 1.25 times teleconverter, which gives you 500mm at full zoom. You then add this, the Olympus MC20 2 times teleconverter. That turns that lens into a 1000mm lens. Factor in as well the 2 times crop factor of micro four thirds, and you have 2000mm. Now when you use this setup with the Panasonic Gh6, we can shoot using pixel to pixel mode in 4K, which crops down on the sensor to use only the pixels it needs to produce a 4K image. This gives another 1.5 times magnification, which equals the equivalent of a full frame 4K camera with a 3000mm lens. So you might be thinking, why have I said 6,000mm, not 3,000mm? Well, okay, maybe this one's a little bit more tenuous, but when I go home, I can crop a 4K video down to HD. You can see here me doing it with DaVinci Resolve, and basically I just zoom in 2 times, which still gives me a full HD image. Now of course you can quibble and say technically it's not 6,000mm, but if you took a 6,000mm lens, put it on a HD camera, you'd end up with the same field of view and similar video footage to what I've got here. And at the end of the day, if it works, it's going to give me a setup with a lot of reach and a lot of capability. So to be clear, apart from the little bits filmed on my phone of the scenery and me talking, everything in this video was filmed with the OM 150-400 and the 2 times teleconverter on the Panasonic Gh6. But in certain instances, I've zoomed out to frame this shot. And I'll make clear where I've cropped and where I haven't cropped down to HD. And in some cases I've actually filmed in 5.7K at 24 frames a second, and I've cropped down to HD that way, but it gives a similar field of view. As we go through this video, I'll display the camera's recording settings and equivalent focal lengths in the black box, with extra detail of my editing in the grey box. Up on the seawall at Rainham, the first thing I filmed was this teal sat among the seaweed. It was pretty windy, which made filming him at this magnification a bit tricky. I had similar issues with these very distant shell ducks. I heard there were some wheatears about, so I headed down to the grassland at the far west end of the seawall, where I found one sitting on a rock. I got some video, but I was shooting into the sun, and thanks to years of shooting with my 300mm prime lens, I forgot I could actually zoom in. Dope. But I found it again and got some much better footage. I got a bit closer and I used the pixel to pixel 4K mode. And in this footage I've cropped it down to HD for that 6,000mm equivalent focal length. I thought the footage was quite impressive considering it was being buffeted by the wind, and I think I've slightly front focused it as well, as I had the focus peaking sensitivity set too high. Here's a second clip I've cropped down to HD in the 5.7K footage. I went into the reserve proper, and a Morrigan hawker was sat there warming itself up in the sun. I set up the camera near the minimum focus distance, and I started off filming uncropped at 5.7K. I then switched to 4K 120p at 1000mm, which is 2000mm equivalent field of view. I switched on the pixel to pixel crop mode to get to 3000mm equivalent, and this is the HD crop from this footage. This is what you can get at 6,000mm from just over a metre away. The head is 15mm across for scale, but cropping down to HD I could barely fit the eyes in. I then entered the perfleet hide, and a little egret was fishing right in front of it, but that meant I could zoom right in for a close-up. I zoomed out when it caught this marsh frog, which it struggled to swallow. I've cropped down to HD here for a closer view, but it's not at full zoom. I then tried to film the snipe on the second set of islands, nearly 60 metres away. The wind was shaking the setup again, and it was a pretty warm day, so the heat haze was starting to show too. But I got some footage. I also filmed these godwits that were even further away, something like 70 or 80 metres away. But I got some okay footage of them having a bit of a preen and clean. There were 2 little groups hanging around in front of the hide as well. I then switched my attention back to the little wee grip, which after a quick ruffle of the feathers and leaving a deposit, it went back to hunting fish. I've cropped into HD here for a close-up. But there were lots of dragonflies flying about, and it switched to hunting them at times. I could see it size them up. It would point up its head and look down its beak. But actually managing to track it and keep it in focus while filming it as it ran through the rushes was tricky. I did in the end get a couple of sequences of it catching and eating the dragonflies that I'm reasonably happy with. And of course I got some footage of them eating the dragonflies after they caught them, because that was much easier to capture. And some nice close-ups at 6000mm were possible here. I even got this bit of footage of one diving out the way of a dragonfly. And a good 100 metres away, this cattle-eaglet flew in. I had enough magnification to get some reasonable shots, but the heat haze was an issue at this range. So I wandered further into the reserve and come across these starlings sat on a bush. Got some close-ups. I ended up in the shooting butts hide, where I filmed this rough. It was a good 50 metres away and against the sun, but the footage came out okay. Walking back, I found some wind chats. These small birds were a good 40 or 50 metres away, so I'm pleased with the footage at this distance, even with a bit of heat haze. And the last bird of note was this cattle-eaglet. Sadly, a combination of the wind and having to film through the fencing and reeds, and my now old friend the heat haze, did reduce the sharpness of the footage somewhat, but I'm pleased how it came out. It was nice to film them feeding on insects. And finally, I came across a limitation of this setup. Turns out it can't see through cows. So, final conclusions. Does this setup actually work? Well, I think it's got great potential. Heat haze was an issue. I think on a misty day I'm going to have issues as well. And of course, keeping that bigger focal length steady was a bit of an issue, especially in the wind. I think I'm going to have to invest in a better tripod and head setup. So, great potential for stuff that's far away. But something I hadn't really thought about is that it's great for close-up stuff as well. Now I have used the Olympus 2 times and 300mm prime together to film invertebrates before. Now with this footage of the dragonfly filmed in 4K in the pixel to pixel mode, I estimate the dragonfly's head to be about 2 centimetres across, which makes the field of view in this video about 3 to 4 centimetres across. So that means it's the equivalent of a 1:2 macro. Of course, then if you crop down to HD, so you're zooming in 2 times, you're getting close to a 1:1 macro lens in terms of field of view. But of course you're over a metre away, which means you can film the insects without disturbing them. The potential here is quite exciting. I'm going to have to do a video on that, but unfortunately it's mid-November, so that's probably going to have to wait till spring. So, in conclusion to my conclusion, it's a great setup. I think it's got great potential. I want to try it on a day that's not quite so warm and with less heat haze. And I'm quite excited by the prospects of using it with smaller, closer up subjects. I think this could be really great for video. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please, of course, give it a like. Any questions, drop them in the comments below, and do consider giving me a subscribe if you like wildlife filmmaking and wildlife photography. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.